Oh, that hunter's still up?
Yeah.
Oh, pulled right into it. I saw that shit. Yo, what's going on, everyone? So this is a plus 26 Throne of Tides on Tyrannical, Volcanic, and Sanguine week. So, to get things started off as a Brewmaster, we're not actually going to do this whole hallway. We're going to grab the first pack and the Pat, and then go into the caster and stop right here. And at this point, normally we would lust. Our hunter is not used to lusting. We normally have a shaman in the group, so she forgot to do that. But right away, we're just going to pop all of our cooldowns and go ham on this pack. We do want to watch the bleed on us. You can see I had 7, now 8 stacks. As soon as I get to 8 stacks, that's definitely too much. I'm going to go ahead and use my dwarf ability and dwarf that off. But you can see here, we do want to be careful because it is sanguine. As soon as the dogs and the casters are dead, I am going to pull into this next group. And here, the priority is actually the sentinel and obviously trying not to sanguine the other mobs. Now, unfortunately, we do have some mobs that get pulled in here and they end up putting sanguine everywhere we don't want it, which sucks. But the big things here are making sure that we're getting kicks on the next casters and working on this sentinel. Now, in that previous pack with the dogs there, you did notice that my leg sweep is currently on cooldown. That's because we used it as soon as the dogs start fixating. You can stun them. They'll still like show that they're doing their cast, but they won't actually be able to move and they won't actually do anything. So that's really good to use there, as well as like Ring of Peace to stop people. On these packs, basically, we're just doing kicks on the water bolts, and then we are using stuns or just like AoE stops to stop the heal, because generally those are kind of synced up pretty well. And then you can see I just use my ring to like knock this away as the sentinel is targeting, or sorry, as the other mob was dying, so it doesn't die on the sentinel. So as we go into the next pack, we do have these 2 dogs and the big lady in here. You do want to focus in on these dogs again. You'll notice that we put another stun. I just put it out right there as soon as they start putting out the bleeds. This is another time that if dwarf comes available, you can use it. Mine's not up. You can use defensives. You can also use ring and stuff if it's not Sanguine week to help keep those off people. But you can see we're just trying to make a nice little like circle or star formation around this mob now that the dogs are dead, so that we don't have its frontal hitting multiple people at the same time. You can see we've got the ret paladin off to the left, the warrior off to the right, and then our Resto Druid is like Pharaoh weaving, and then the hunter you can see moving around up towards the top part of the screen, baiting the slimes and whatnot, and also dealing with Volcanic for us. So this chick doesn't really do that much. She isn't really safe to do with other mobs. Like when you go upstairs, I definitely wouldn't pull this with like the 5 casters that are next to her, but she can be safe to do with like the dogs if you have a lot of like stuns and like knockbacks to deal with them. So after that, you can see that even though we didn't lust the first pack, we did lust as soon as that first area was dead, and then we lusted on that next 3 pack before the dog and the big chick. But normally you would do that on pool. Now up here, it's important to wait till you get your healer up, and then we are going to do this entire hallway at once. So it's really important to get threat on these first 2 mobs. I've had a lot of times where like I don't get threat on these and then people die. So just be careful about that. We're going to go in here, grab these, try to get an interrupt on one of these. Normally I get interrupts on the Oracle, and we set other people to get interrupts on the others. But then you do want to try to get as much threat on here as you can. Our Paladin here was a pug in this group, so he didn't hear when I said like, hey, I'm gonna have a little bit of lower threat over voice, because he wasn't in voice chat with us. So he definitely pulled off. So just let your group know that they need to hold off for like 3 seconds just for you to get threat, because you know, obviously if they take threat, they're gonna die. It's pretty bad. But that pack's really actually not that dangerous to deal with. It's mostly about just making sure we get kicks for things, and that you watch the sentinels. Now, if you pull the sentinels with these, you do have to watch, because it does a lot of damage to you with its Shellbreaker cast, which is something that you either want to have some type of active mitigation up for, whether it's Cell Brew, a Dampen Harm, a Fort Brew, or if you just want to like time out your mastery so that you can dodge the ability when it comes. But you can also roll away from it, and it'll just like do the full cast, but it won't go off, and then it'll try to like chase you down and do it again. So you can do that. But the other thing to watch out for is obviously that the heal absorb bubble that it puts on people. That's pretty deadly. That's what we just lost our Resto Druid to there, and it's really easy to lose people to it. Now, this group actually has something that basically almost everyone except for the Resto Druid could deal with that ability. So warriors can spell reflect it, and that does the most damage because it puts the ability back onto the mob, which is big. Rep Paladins can bubble it right before it hits, and then it just won't apply. And Hunters can also turtle it right before it comes off. If Turtles try to feign death it, or if you try to shadow meld it, it will just pick someone else, so just be careful of that. Now, after we deal with that, we come up and we grab just the first 3 mobs here. Now, if you're a Vengeance DH, you're probably like, why didn't you just do the whole thing? Well, because I'm not a Vengeance DH. But, so with this, with it being Sanguine Week, we are pulling it down just a little bit down here, just so that we're going to do that next pack basically up where that tar trap was, and we just want to make sure we don't put Sanguine all over that place. So here, again, just getting kicks on these mobs, watching out, because both of these are the witches, so that they just do like straight damage. They don't try to heal, but the damage can be quite a lot, especially if you get 2 of those AoE circles going off at the same time. So next, I have my Transcendence put where I just put that ping, and I'm going to come over and I'm going to grab these 5 mobs, making sure not to grab the pat of the big chick who walks around. And we're just going to chill over here, get things together, and the first priority here is to kill off these little dog dragons. These things do the most damage, as you can see. Our warrior is going to stun those and make sure that they stop moving, and we just want to kind of kill them and try to make sure that they're not going to die on top of everything else. Now, while we're doing that, obviously we do want to make sure that we are getting kicks on the casters, and then the melee mob isn't really that important. As long as you have threat on it, you're not going to die from it. But you can see we're just moving things around, getting kicks, pulling out the Sanguine, and once we just have 1 left, it is safe to do this chick, the bigger chick that does the frontal and the big poison circle with the rest. So when this other mob dives, we're going to pull away from the Sanguine, and we're just going to make sure that we're keeping that like star formation that we had before, trying to make sure that we're not all grouped together. You can see there our Ret and our Resto were right next to each other, so now we've got better that star formation now. Someone over there likes to AD strafe. It looks like it's our Paladin, who is the pug, but ideally he wouldn't be on top of the warrior. He'd an AD strafe and he'd just be chilling off to my right, but sometimes melee, they got a small brain, they can't handle it, they got to move around. If you're a melee who likes the AD strafe, I recommend you get used to jumping. Just hit the spacebar, just jump. It's a lot safer than AD strafing, especially when it comes to mobs like this. But once this mob gets pretty low, we are going to go ahead and grab these dragons, the little dragon dogs. So when it gets to about 20%, that's where I go ahead and pull these. You want to get a taunt or hit something on it before it gets like in between those mobs. You don't want it to be right next to it, otherwise it will show social pull. But we are able to pull that there. You can see I use the ring to knock it away from the Sanguine and to give our like range a spot to stand in that. And then we are again using our stuns here to stop these. And again, don't be afraid if you get too high on your stacks of this bleed, dwarf it off. Don't be afraid to use Fort Brew or Dampen Harm, because that stuff does really hurt, especially on Fort Week. This is Tyrannical, so it's not a big deal, but it does still hurt. So over here, we're going to take the group of casters off to the right. Now, it doesn't matter which group you take, either the right or the left, but you don't need both. So you want to do one or the other. I generally come over to the right, just because then when we're doing the boss, we can go clockwise, and I prefer to go clockwise with the boss later. So here, again, just making sure to interrupt what we can, and then anytime that there is a heal going off, we're going to use any kind of AoE stops that we have, whether it's Ring of Peace, Leg Sweep, Shockwave from our warrior. Sometimes I'll even throw out a para to stop one, and you can see that's on cooldown now because I used it to stop a cast. So we do that and then just knock it away with ring. Now, this next pack, again, is also pretty dangerous. And again, the priority here is the Sentinel. You can see I marked it with skulls. So want to get them grouped together by using a kick on one and just kind of pull them together. And then this is another good spot to pop your cooldowns. I know that there's another boss coming up here, but as a Brewmaster, we do have our offensive cooldowns up pretty quickly, especially when it's just like Exploding Keg. You know, that 1 minute cooldown comes up pretty quickly, so it's really useful to use here. Again, don't be afraid to like help off heal. You might need to like stun or knock away first, but if someone gets that bubble on them and your healer's having trouble with it, don't be afraid to throw out Chi Wave and then, you know, maybe toss a Vivify or two out if you need to. Obviously, you don't need to knock things away for Chi Wave, but you know, if you want to Vivify and be more safe, definitely do that. When this Sentinel's alone by itself, you're definitely 100% safe to just throw out the heal, as long as it's not about to do its crush on you. Now, I do a little bit of setup before we do this boss because I want to put markers on the 4 directions, because this is going to allow it so that when it does its big AoE damage, that it's always going to bounce off of us. So what we do is we put 4 cardinal directions here, which help for, you know, the ads in phase 2 to tell who's kicking what, and then also because as the tank we're going to stand directly underneath the boss. She's kind of unique as she doesn't like run away from you when you get inside of her, which is nice because now when she does the Focus Tempest, you can stand in the middle, and as long as people are at the 4 cardinal directions, you will be the closest to every person. So if it starts on the hunter, it's going to go to you and then chain to someone else. If it starts on the Resto Druid, it's going to go to you and then chain to someone else. If it's on the warrior, it's going to go to you and then chain to someone else. So it doesn't really matter where people, like how close, far, or away they are from like you, right? Just as long as you're the closest person to them. And that's what the 4 cardinal directions here do. Ideally, you normally would have your 2 ranged. If you've got like 2 melee, you'd put melee on opposite sides of each other just to make sure they're not too close, because sometimes they can be close even at the cardinal directions, but it is what it is. So as soon as the intermission starts, I taunt the big guy and I just cake smash and get a kick on star, and then I try to pull it towards the middle to get it towards the other group. Now we have assigned our warrior to kick the one that gets marked with diamond over here, just so we can easily get those together. Now this is kind of like a hassle. You're going to notice I kind of get knocked up once or twice during this. Sometimes it just happens, right? It's not a biggest deal. As long as you're topped, you can live it. But sometimes it's worth getting kicked or knocked up so that you can get back and make sure that you have threat and everything. So as soon as the next phase 1 starts, we actually lust. Our hunter just lusted, and again we just use the same formation. Obviously make sure that we're getting kicks off as we go. Unfortunately our paladin decided he wanted to change spots, so you can see our hunter just had to move because they are getting kind of blasted by each other. But now they're in the formation that we generally like to have. But again, we're just going to keep on going through this. Don't be afraid during the Focus Tempest to, 1, pop defensives, like Diffuse or Cell Brew, but also don't be afraid to off-heal during that. We are unique in the fact that we can just throw off Vivifies and it doesn't affect us too much, especially while we're casting, because our stagger still works while casting. So I highly recommend doing that. But again, next intermission, same idea. Unfortunately, our Ret Paladin decided he wanted to put a 6-second stun on Star, which wasn't helpful because that's where I was already set up at, so just casting over there. If that happens, use Ring. Ideally, use Ring to like move things when you need to away from like the geysers if you got a lot of melee in your group, but if one doesn't get pulled in, then obviously you can use Ring to do that. And again, we do make the priority here to be the melee mob, not the casters. We just try to get kicks on the casters at first. Because it does do the most damage, especially if it frontals. It does get like an enrage effect too every time it frontals too, so that can be soothed by hunters and rogues and druids and stuff. But again, after that, just kind of deal with it the same way, get back in your formation, and then you're pretty much done with this boss. So the reason why we lust during the second phase there is because that kind of is where you don't normally have your cooldowns there, and if you use that, then it helps you to get through that back into the intermission, and then you've got cooldowns again for the last phase. So we found that that works out pretty nicely. Plus, it ties up really nicely to give you lust for the 3rd boss on Tyrannical weeks, which you definitely want lust for that 3rd boss because he blasts tanks super hard. Especially when the totem's up. So that's kind of like the idea behind lusting there instead of lusting at the very beginning of the fight or lusting on the 2nd boss. So when it comes to the 2nd boss, basically what we're going to do is we've cleared just the ads that are on the left side. So the ads on the right are over there. We don't want to go near that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the boss over here. And we want to make sure that when we do the stack, we pull it close to the door, but not too close, because if any of these slimes that spawn by the puddle get knocked out, they will actually reset the boss. So you just want to be careful because they can go through that door, and so you don't want to put it too close to the door. You just want to make sure it's kind of over here. So you can see I put down even a ping. We're going to do it, and then we're just going to move over here. Now for the knockbacks, I do like to put down a Transcendence. As you'll see, I try to put myself against this wall, and sometimes the wall will catch you, but a lot of times you'll kind of like get knocked around it, which is super awkward, and then you get stuck on that, which is even more awkward, so you can just use Transcendence. But once these slimes come up, it's really nice because Spinning Crane Kick, you can just spinning kick right next to them, and they'll just never get past you. It is nice to kind of maybe use a defensive if you need to there, especially if you've got the crush from the boss going on you, because that will really hurt. You can see my stagger's super high because I took one without any mitigation. So just be careful about that. And then when the second set of slime comes out, again, just bait it near the first one. Be ready to knock, and this is where you're going to see I transcend back. Boom, there it is. And then we want to stay close to this because there's another set of slimes. They're going to like spawn, but then the next slime's going to come down in that spot. Will slime, and then you'll have another knockback. So what we generally do here is we try to put it close, we move, and then when the knockback happens, we have our warrior do his rallying shout so that we have extra stamina, kind of like a defensive. It's our only defensive that we have normally in our group, so that's what we tend to use. But you can see I'm just kind of keeping myself in between the boss and the ads, just spinning crane kicking to make sure that they stay close, letting myself get knocked and just roll back. And then again, we're just going to set up close to the old slime. Now you do want to be careful because that slime does slowly grow, so you don't want to be like too close because then you can end up standing in it and it does hurt quite a bit because it's magic damage. But you can see we're already about more than halfway around this room, so we're trying to put the stuff near the edge again because we are coming up to where those ads are. So we've got the hallway towards where we leave, and then we've got the other set of ads. So we want to be careful here. So here's another spot where I'm going to put down Transcendence. Here comes the knock. I will transcend back, and then I'll just pull the boss a little bit and make sure that as these slimes spawn, I'm there to kind of knock them. So our hunter did a good job of knocking them, the ones that spawn close, so we can kind of get them all grouped together. And again, we're just doing what we can to put them here. Now again, make sure that while you're doing that, you don't want to like super energy starve yourself, because you do want to watch out for the big crush that goes out on tanks, because it does hurt, but you do want to be careful. Now with this being Tyrannical, you can kind of see I'm pulling the boss over here. This is because again, we're out of room and we don't want to get knocked in those ads. If we get knocked in those ads, one, we don't need them, that's extra %, and two, it'll probably cause a wipe. So you can see our range are standing behind the boss. Ideally they come up with us and we get all stacked together, and this time we would just move back towards the room that we came from before, and so kind of just turn it around and go back the other way. On fortified weeks, you normally don't have to worry about this because you normally have more than enough room, but on super high Tyrannical keys, you know, that's kind of just an issue. So there you can see we take care of it, and now we're going to go ahead and move down to the first floor again. Now, be smart with these. I've seen so many people who try to go like through this too fast, and then they kill themselves. Just play it safe. No need to go too fast. Alright, so you can see our hunter just... she didn't actually get hit by that. She got hit by something at the very end of the boss. So I thought she got hit there. But I've seen so many times that we run through here and like someone just gets hit and dies, and then it just wastes more time because, you know, that we have to wait for them to res, and then they have to run the whole hallway again. I've been told that if the original people make it all the way down this tunnel and land, it will spawn the res point down there, but I haven't tested that myself. So if that works, let me know in the comments, because that's what I've been told, but I haven't actually done it myself. So anyway, setting up for the next pull, I'm going to pull this Watcher over here, and you're going to notice I'm going to ping over on the corner. That's where I want everyone to stand LOS, and then we're going to pull all these Hunters and the Aqua Lancers over here, and we're just going to kind of group them up. We're going to get pulled together here, and then we just kind of like roll out, and this gives me a good time to come over here. Now, it's important to take your Poison Dispel as a Brewmaster in this key, because obviously these Hunters here put out poisons. They should only go on you, but if someone else grabs aggro, they will go on you, go on them. So just make sure that you have it on them, and then be careful because it is Sanguine week, and so you want to be careful about not over sanguining. Now, it's not too bad if some of these small ads get healed, as long as they're not getting healed a lot, but you really don't want to heal up the Watcher, because that one is the one that like is dictating when we can move on to the next pack. So you can see some of our Hunters were standing there in the Sanguine too long, and they did get healed up. It kind of sucks, but whatever. We've only got 2 left when that big one dies, so we finish off the one on the left. And I told everyone here to finish off this one as I go forward, but apparently everyone decided they wanted to follow me. So unaware to me, we had 1 Hunter up. So in here you can safely pull this Watcher and this Seer and all these little tentacle dudes together. You do want to get kicks on the Seer, and then on Tyrannical week, these Mindbenders don't do a whole lot of damage, but on Fortified weeks, every single one of their hard casts, they do like massive AoE damage. So you might just want to play it safe and kind of practice with it by using like stuns and stuff, but they do spawn Sanguine, so be careful of that. But once all the small mind benders are dead, we're good to pull into the next pack. Again, I generally will pull what's left into this other seer pack with the mind benders, just because the mind benders do a lot of damage, and you do want to just kind of be careful with that. But once again, we're just going to kicks on the seers, making sure that we're avoiding the race car track lines, whatever you want to call them, that the seers are spawning, and obviously making sure that we don't get gripped too close together. So as you saw in my opening though here, we are going to have a seer line come up at the same time of a grip, and boom, there goes the hunter. So just be careful of that. Sometimes you get unlucky. If you do see a line, don't do what I did. Try to pull the watcher away from the line so it doesn't crush directly into it and end up killing someone on your team. But kind of funny to watch. So learn from my mistakes. Once that pack is dead, what we do is we go into the next pack that has the 2 seers. We're going to pull those. Generally, we'll put 2 kicks on each of these, and then do like an AoE stop, a stun of some sort, and then repeat that. And we will also pull these 2 other watchers with it. So you do want to watch about getting crushed into one of the lines again. So generally try to pull it so that they're not going to happen at the same spot, same time. But again, we do like I get first kick on star, the warrior gets second kick on star, the ret paladin gets first kick on diamond. And then the hunter gets second kick on diamond, and then since we're out of kicks, because it does take 3 melee kicks for these mobs if you don't have like a warlock doing a slow on it, then we'll do like leg sweep, and then we'll start repeating. And maybe when in place of the hunter's second kick, she'll use like scatter shot, or I'll use like paralyze. Anything works on those, so you can use those. You can't use sheep. I don't think sheep works, but most hard CCs will work. So yeah. Once these are dead, generally you are safe to pull into the mind benders, but I didn't actually do that here. I think it was just because I was worried about the sanguine at the time. But normally, once you get down to these being low health, you can just pull into these mind benders and take care of them. Now, again, there are a lot of mind benders here. This is a pack that on fortified weeks really hurts because they do a lot of damage with this. So you want to try your best not to use any of your defensives here because you really need them for the boss. But you can use any AoE stops like Lake Sleep. You can use your Ring of Peace. Fear works on these. They're not undead, they're aberrations, so fears work. So anything that you have in your grip you can use to stop those red hard casts from going off. And just be careful that you are pulling them away from the boss so that you're spawning Sanguine away if it's still Sanguinic. Alright, going on to this boss. So this is the next boss where we're going to lust. So we're going to use lust here, and we do want to kind of like plan out our defensives here because you want to have a cell brew and 1 other defensive going for each one of the totem phases. So as things go, I am going to pop my cooldowns to get things going here. Now, unfortunately, I do have my Tainted Rageheart put on the same keybind as my Bone Dust Brew, which means that I use that there instead of with a totem, which is kind of awkward. But you can see I do go ahead and pop Cell Brew there. Or actually, I didn't pop Cell Brew there. The Frog Trinket did last just long enough for me to kind of not have to use anything else there, which was kind of nice. Generally, that doesn't happen. I should have actually waited to use that until the totem came up. Generally, the first one, I'll just use Cell Brew and the Frog Trinket. On the second one, again, I'm going to go ahead and hit Cell Brew as it's coming out. And then you have your options. I use Dampen Harm there. Generally, I would recommend using Diffuse Magic first because it is the shortest cooldown that we have out of our like major cooldowns. But I use Dampen Harm there. Don't know why. And then with these like ground fissures, which you can see just killed one of our hunters. In melee, we generally just stack up together and then just go clockwise around the boss. Unfortunately, you can see that our hunter, when she res, she got rezzed into getting the debuff, which kind of sucks. Now on this next one, again, I prop Cell Brew, and I do have Fort Brew going, and I am taking a lot of damage here, so I just went ahead and used my Touch of Death on that totem because you could see I was taking a lot of damage. That Cell Brew died really quickly. Fort Brew is actually one of the lesser defensives that kind of helps with that one because it is magic damage. You do get like a flat damage reduction, but yeah. So on this next one, I'm using Cell Brew again and Diffuse Magic, and this time you can see like I'm taking like no damage until the Diffuse falls off. So at this point, the boss is getting low, and because I messed up my cooldowns here and didn't use Trinket the first time or Diffuse the first time, I don't have anything else to go. So the goal here is just to push the boss into 25%, because if it hits 25%, then he won't cast another totem. as you can see here. So we got 25, it's going to phase. We got a couple extra percent here because it was doing the ground fissures there, which is kind of nice. But basically all we need to do is get threat on this boss, and then we like to use these little orbs because they're easier to kind of maneuver around. You don't have to go as far around as if you're trying to go around the totem. It is nice after you go there the first time to put down like Transcendence. That way you can just easily get back again, and you can see I can tank it in a spot to where it's just easy to get back. Now unfortunately I did use Touch of Death on the second totem instead of the first one, so it's not quite back up for the boss here, so we are going to have to LOS one more time, and then we'll take care of the boss. So, as you can see here, we've got about 9 minutes left. Awkwardly, we do have this run that's like 30 seconds just to get back to the other part. I really wish there was some type of like bubble to just take you there, kind of like when you went down the elevator, but unfortunately there's not, so... our healer did need mana, so what I did is I gave him Tiger's Lust so he could run up and get up that, and that allows him to now drink, and then once I get up there, he should be at full health, or full mana, rather. So, the next pool is kind of a big one, but hopefully, because we're running back, everyone has like quite a bit of cooldowns back up. But we're going to do these Aqua Lancers, the Hunters, and this first Sentry together, along with these Corruptions. So you can see here I start to pull away, and then I decide, you know what, we're just going to do it together. So the key here is just to make sure that when Swell's going off, we don't have too many of the Corruptors dead, because they do put stacks of that disease on that increase the damage you take from Swell. So what we try to do is we try to wait till Swell happens and then start AoEing. So you can see we did get stacks there, but generally as you get it towards the end, it's not as big as if you get them all right before the Swell starts. So ideally, if you are going to pull Corruptors in, you want to wait till Swell starts, maybe let it do a tick or two, and then start just blasting AoE. And if you do it like that, the debuff should fall on its own without any dispels before the next Swell starts. And that's kind of like the nice timing on that, assuming you can burst those down fast enough. But you can see here, we're just going to grab the rest of the Corruptors and deal with them with the rest of these two Hunters that were left from the Aqua Lance and Hunter pool. And then the next pool is really hard if you don't have a Vengeance Demon Hunter, because, well, not this next pool with the Swell, but the next pool after the Swell, because it has 6 Aqua Lancers that all need kicked or AoE stopped. So the way that we plan to work with this is generally when we have our Shaman here, we'll have them use like the Knock-Up Thunderstorm, which is a 30-second cooldown. Then we'll have our Warrior use Shockwave. Then I'll use Leg Sweep. Then our Shaman will throw down their Capacitor Totem, since it's like not the best to use. You can't like plan it to be pitch perfect. And then after that, we'll use like Ring of Peace and then Fear. We don't have our Shaman here today because he had to go, and so we have this Ret Paladin instead. But we also have a Resto Druid for once, so we're going to kind of shift some of those that maybe the Shaman would have done with a In-Cap Roar. So, as we go in here, we're going to get things together. Our Warrior is going to go ahead and use his Shockwave. We're getting threat on everything. Now I'm going to use my Leg Sweep right before the next one. It's important not to kick these, by the way, because you want to make sure that they're all going off at the same time. Right there, you can see I almost put down my ring on the third one, but we did use In-Cap Roar instead. When they get separated and get lower here, now we're going to have our Hunter kick square that's over there, and we had our Warrior use his AoE Fear on the ones that were close, which AoE Fear on the Warrior is capped at 5, so you do want to be careful with that. But that allows us to finish those off and go straight into the next pack. So the way I like to deal with this is I like to pick one to have us majority like focus, and then when it gets to about 50%, we'll swap to the other one. This is because when one dies, it's going to spawn the Corruptors, but when the second one dies, it's not going to spawn any. So ideally, you're going to want to kill them together, even though that means that you're going to have like Swells going off at the same time. But if you have defensives or just kind of like Planet Nice, then it works out. So you can see that's what we did here. You can see the first one. Sometimes it will die before this goes off. This time it didn't, just because we had a little bit more focused single target here than normal. But you can see the first one dies, its Sanguine goes, it spawns the little Corruptors, and then the second one dies, and the second one doesn't spawn it. So the closer you can get those to killing, you can see we only actually got 2 of these Corruptors because they like slowly spawn after. And so because we killed the second one fast enough, we only got 2 of those instead of getting like the 5 or 6 that normally spawn. Now, this last boss is all about making sure that your DPS can handle stacking in a triangle formation or around the puddles that are already spawned, and then making sure that you don't frontal the rest of the group with the frontal from the tank buster, and then obviously picking up ads. So every time that the tank buster goes off, you should have cell brew up. That's the only thing that you really need to deal with it. If for some reason you don't have it come up in time, you can always use any other defensive. Every defensive works on it. It is a like magical nature, some type of attack. But the biggest part that we struggle on as brewmasters is getting the casters group. So you can see that on right there when those spawned, I pinged the farthest away caster for our hunter to interrupt, and I just try to get a taunt on that and then just kind of cake smash on the others. But you can see our DPS are making like a triangle around the already existing sludge. After that, I'm making sure to point the boss away. My cell brew is back up. And again, it should line up every single time, even if you're not like trying to. Like I'm always making sure my blackout kick, like charged ability, is going into Breath of Fire, so it's not ever actually giving me extra charge on Cake Smash. So like it's not reducing that any extra time. So just as long as you're doing that normally, it should be up in time. But if you miss one, just you can throw it and dampen harm, diffuse, 4-pro, whatever you really want to press. You can even do Zen Med if you want to be spicy. So again, here I just want to emphasize too that when we are dealing with these ads, again, if you have the ping system bound, that's really helpful as a brewmaster. Because you can see I'm going to ping the farthest one. And then once we get those in, a lot of times when things are like getting close to dying, so that we don't have to like, once one of these dies, it spawns a puddle, right? So we actually do use Shockwave and Leg Sweep, our stuns, to keep those together so that like the puddle is stacked. Just make sure that your ranged or your other DPS, anyone in your group, and you included, doesn't stand too close to the existing puddle, because they do slowly grow. So if you're too close, then you will kind of stand in that, and that does do a lot of damage because it's like a magic damage. So this is basically just rinse and repeat. We're doing the same thing, trying to grab these up, making sure. You can see I couldn't get threat on this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and ring it towards myself. That allows me to get better threat on it. And again, we're just kind of rinsing, repeating this. Time is getting kind of close. We can see we've got like 40 seconds left on Lust, so we're going to tell our hunter that after this set of puddles, that she can go ahead and switch pets so that we can use our Lust when it comes up. But you know, really, there's not too much to say about this one. Once this phase is done, if you get close to it where there's ads up and the boss is about to die, you can actually ignore the ads. You'll see that we do that here in just a little bit. And as soon as the boss dies, the ads will disappear. So once that happens, you can just go get on the octopus and just start blasting away. But that's really it for this key. If you guys have any questions about things that we did, things that you think that we could do that I didn't do, that would help out, I'd love to see them. I do have a couple of videos coming out very soon. One of them is going to be about gear for next season on what to use for high key pushing, so look out for that. Also, PTR is coming out on Tuesday, so we'll have some better information about like what all will be available and what item levels will be. Seems like crafted gear is going to be 522 and regular gear might be 525, but we'll see. So look forward to my gear list for that. Also, if there is anything from the PTR that you want me to take a look at and cover for you guys, go ahead and put in the comments. That way I can make a video over anything that you guys might want to see. But anyways, if you did like this video, make sure to give it a like. If you want to subscribe so you can get a little bit easier content access from me, it does help me out as well. You can do that. But anyways, I will see you guys in the next one.